Hello, you guys have been asking me for a Russia deck. You know, with all this Russia changing around, with changing the guards, etc. You guys want to see my deck, and I'm happy to show it to you because we do need to understand what's changed significantly and the additions that we need to make to this once very beautiful, perfectly balanced deck that obviously now is not so much the same way. So obviously Russia's suffered. I mean, the win rates dropped significantly for Russia. I tried using this deck, and unfortunately it didn't work out quite as well as I'd hoped at all. Really, to be honest, it was a struggle. It is a struggle to play Russia. It's a hard grind these days. But, you know, I'm going to talk you through what I still think works. What I still think works to an extent. Obviously, the biggest change ultimately here is that I've lost my T15 Barbaruses and my Ante, which is obviously now replaced by the Book M3, which, in all fairness, I don't mind this vehicle at all. So, there's a lot that's still the same, but I want to talk about the major changes first. So, Terminators, we used to have 4 of these guys. Again, if you watch the older videos, you guys know that I love Terminators. They are just great, they're super cool, and they are epic. But, obviously, with their price increase from 190 to 250, we can't afford as many. Now the Barbarous, I used to have, what, 2 or maybe just 1 of these in the deck, but ultimately, yeah, it's obviously just unbelievably expensive. You know, for 350 points, it's not the same price as a decked out SEP V2. I don't think that's fair at all. I mean, let's just, let's just for the sake of argument, let's have a quick look at comparing the 2 vehicles together. Here's the Barbarous pin and put it at the maximum price, and where's the SEP V2? There she is. Bang. So 350 points to 350 points as well with the upgrade. Okay, for some reason that's not adding it on. There we go. Cool. On paper, you might think these are comparable, but obviously the 120 mil is just going to do a shit ton more damage than the 57. Obviously outranging it at a certain point. Yeah, okay, it's got 2 missiles, and they're good missiles, don't get me wrong, but that's not going to get through the front arm of Abrams, is it? And ultimately APS will stop it, and so will smoke. So how in the hell this is deemed to be fair is beyond me, but that's not what I want to talk to you about today. What I want to talk about is this deck, so let's get back on it. I've still got 6 T90s, I still think they're very good tanks, apart from, obviously, the main difference now is that Javelins work a lot better. And ECM, which used to save your tank a lot more, doesn't really stop Javelins anymore. So the Javelin will still pretty much, not guarantee exactly, but the Javelin is close to being guaranteed a hit, which is, you know, a hard pill to swallow. So your 30% ECM that used to make this tank super great, the best tank for its price by a mile, makes it kind of pointless these days. So is there even any point bringing the T90? Is this deck the best all-rounder deck anymore? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure at all. But we are going to explore the idea. But yeah, it's been a very tough update for Russia. You know, I play a lot of decks. I play a lot of American ones, a lot of Russian decks. I'm obviously trying to figure out, this is a little preview of what's to come, wink. Basically, you know, mech and guards. I see why they've done it. Everyone was using guards all the time, and I get that, but I don't think this was the best way to change it at all. But anyway, let's take a look at this deck in more detail, and I can talk about each individual unit and how best to use them over here. So the VDV Spetsnaz. The thing is, the Burs, right? So let me talk about this. The Sturmoviki, obviously a big change that's happened. You've lost your Engineer Sturmoviki, which were obviously beefier, tougher, and more damage output thermobaric bazookas. This is an HE shell on the RPG-7V, not a thermobaric one, so it does a bit less damage to infantry, but clearly it can go for a lot further, which, yeah, has its pros and cons, but ultimately I'd rather the Big Bang. Now, I think it's kind of crucial to pair these together. I mean, it's very cheap, bear in mind. So 60 points and 55 gives you a grand total of 115. And that's pretty cheap for 2 squads. Bear in mind, this is an 8-man squad and this is a 5-man squad. So that's, you know, that's pretty good. These guys obviously give you the machine guns and the longer range shells, which is really cool. And these guys give you the thermobaric shells, which do more damage. They've also got little machine guns, and they're just great at CQB and close range. So these guys paired together now with the update work super, super well. Let's look at more of the Recon tabs. So Typhoon VDVs, you guys know I love these things. These are just great, especially with the 30mm cannon. Actually saves your neck on openers quite a lot. You wouldn't think it, but this is really good, to be fair. So there we are. That's the Typhoon VDV for you. A great vehicle all around. Yeah, you do want to stick the cannon on, but if you just want it as a little transport for picking up pilots, etc., stick to the 35 cheaper version, because that works great too. We got two snipers. Two sniper squads are primarily for intelligence, obviously. They're suppressed, which is really cool. And they actually managed to survive in a fight. They're actually quite tough. This little quad, you know, it's an assault rifle. It looks like a submachine gun, but it fires, what, 7.62? Yeah, it does a lot of damage. It's a good little weapon. This weapon right here. Wait, no, this weapon right here. Yeah, it is a really good squad. It's got laser designation, of course, like all sniper squads should. And yeah, it works great. It is a really good. It is a good team. Very survivable as well. But first, as far as snipers go, of course. Now we've got an Orion. Again, the only reason I keep Orions and drones basically in decks anymore, in Russian decks, of course. Well, and to be honest, in American, because other than the Sentinel, which obviously is an actual valid reconnaissance thing, all the other drones are basically for clearing out back lines. Now, the 4-post you can use because at low altitude it is better for spotting snipers, but I obviously do prefer the 4500 vision overall. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Obviously it flies high altitude, so it is easier to shoot these things down compared to these guys, but yeah, you know, it's a sort of trade-off that you have to accept, I suppose. Ultimately, I do want to go for the Orion. I mean, a 4-post is 50 points, you know. If you just get a couple of these instead of one of these, it makes your probability of finding stuff in your back line quite a lot better, in all fairness. You know what? Maybe I should just do this quick little fix right now. Yeah, you'd much rather 2 drones than 1 because you search a wider area, and these things are going to be better at spotting at low altitude. Let's see the skins on them. I've never actually used these. Alright, let's make it camouflaged, why not? Yeah, so there we go. There's a little change there. You don't need to put weapons on it, I don't think so, because obviously if you find a sniper, you're not going to waste the drones. Yeah, if you don't find them, by the way, that's going to be a waste of 20 points that you've just spent bringing in that drone, so there we go. You're going to send a unit like maybe this guy to go and deal with the thing. Now let's talk about the SAR map for a second. The SAR map is really cool because obviously it's got an 80 jam, it's rapid, 130 points, and sorry, 130 speed, and it's only 45 points. These are suicide units, and you know what? The best way to use them is just to throw them into the enemy's back line, you know, obviously on a route that you don't expect the enemy to have covered, for example, you know, a tree line on the edge of the map, etc., and hopefully find yourself a Patriot or something that you can smoke with 2 of these shells. 1200 range, obviously paper thin armor. Once you get discovered, you are toast, but ultimately it's a suicide unit that will trade super well if it does find some backline arty and stuff like that. Now the VDV Razvedka, this is a really good squad. By the way, the VDV Spetsnaz and Razvedka, they're force multipliers that you don't ever want to set them on their own, even though to be fair, the Spetsnaz can do a lot of damage on their own. Yeah, it's a force multiplier, which means that you want to use it with other squads. So, for example, the VDV Dasha, for instance, with 2 RPGs. You know, it just gives it that bump, little extra firepower, bit of stealth, extra visibility, to help your infantry out. So yeah, these guys are great with other infantry squads. Absolutely brilliant. And also this RPG does a high amount of damage upon successful penetration. So yeah, also a great thing. Either way, the more RPGs you have, the more likely you are to trigger APS, which get through APS by obviously triggering the first one, which is really good. There we go. 4 of those squads and 4 of these guys because, to be honest, I really like them. They're also really cheap. For an infantry squad, okay, for an infantry squad of 5, it's maybe not the best value for your money. Bear in mind, airborne in their cheaper configuration are 75, and that's a 9-man squad these days, which is obviously packs a huge punch. But, you know, these are still really good to bring into the field. Now, the BRM 3K57. Okay, so the scout car with a 57mm cannon on it and 2 attacker missiles and reactive armor. This is a very good vehicle. It's a very good scout car. It can do a lot of damage, and to be honest, you can use it as a fighting vehicle. I see a lot of players do that, and it works a dream. The only problem is, again, if you do get into, you know, a helicopter situation, helicopters do actually do quite well against this. The 57mm cannon is great, but it's not the Derivata cannon. The range is limited to 1100, whereas the Derivata is 1900. So yeah, you're not going to be as survivable against helicopters. They can easily outrange you. You've also only got 1 smoke. Obviously, the previous update nerfed that to from 2. Basically, it seems like every update Russia's getting nerfed, but whatever. Yeah, you used to have 2 smokes. Obviously, now you get 1, which is not ideal for this vehicle. Obviously, these missiles do pack a punch. They fire on the move. So yeah, very good. By the way, these do not fire on the move, so you need to stop to shoot. There we go. Bear that in mind. Cool, that's the Recon tab sorted. Let's talk about the infantry. Now, I've got the Verbers. Again, the reason I used to love this deck so much is because it had the best of everything. It had the best Recon, it had the best Manpad, it had the best Engineer Sturmoviki, so CQB infantry, the best ATGM, about one of the best launches, and a really cost-effective anti-tank squad. So yeah, you still have a lot of those things, but you've lost quite a lot. You also had the Ante, which was obviously the best Russian AA. Yeah, you still have a very... These are unchanged, by the way. The air tab and the helicopter tab is basically unchanged whatsoever, which is great. But a lot of other things are changed. Again, the Barbarous is gone, which was, well, it's not gone, but who in the right mind would use it for 350 points? That's way too expensive, so there we go. And the Terminator is obviously more expensive, so you're less... not less likely to use it, but you're just more cautious with these things. You could send them in on suicide missions and trade with them a lot better back in the day. But again, to me, I'm not sure it makes sense that a full-out blown tank, a T90, is now cheaper than a Terminator. Granted, this is max decked out, but so is this. Yeah, I mean, it's the price of a default stock T90M. I don't think they're that comparable. But there we go. Let's talk about the infantry. So the Verbers are fantastic. It is the best manpad in game by a long margin. It works really well, it hits reliably, and it's just great. So yeah, use them all the time. You want to max out these squads for those. The B-15 is also a super cool vehicle. Now obviously it's always been a budget T-15 Barbarous. Basically paper thin armor. You still get some APS, although again, it's been nerfed from 4 to 2, and your smokes from 2 to 1. You still get your 57mm cannon. You get Cornet missiles, which are obviously great. You get Bulat missiles, which are great because they do a lot of damage to infantry. They can, do a lot of damage to vehicles as well, obviously at less range. But they also trigger APS, allowing your Cornets to punch through, which is really cool. The problem with this vehicle is when you compare it to a Buckers, for example, because it's in the same sort of close price range. When you compare these vehicles, obviously the armor makes it very undesirable. However, the transporting of 8 men in the back of it is really quite good. It's very useful. It allows you to put stuff like cornets or the VDV Dasha into the vehicle to give it, the jump out close fire support that it needs, because it is not survivable on its own. You always want to bring it in a pair. Don't let these guys go out alone, because they will just get eaten up alone. And what I find works really well is to stick 2 Verbers into one of these and stick either a cornet, obviously if it's a long range part of the map you're in, or if it's a CQB part of the map, either VDV Dasha, because of the 2 RPGs, or Razvedka. So yeah, that's how you want to use the B-15. I find they do work really well in that configuration, but do remember that they are paper thin, and ultimately that a helicopter will absolutely annihilate them, as will any other bit of American armor. So yeah, don't put it in a square fight against an Abrams or anything like that. Now, we've mentioned these guys already. They are fantastic. They work so goddamn well. By the way, people use Desantniki. Well, I've seen people use Desantniki, and I understand why you'd want them. They are your standard heavy infantry squad, right? However, basically for a similar price, not the same price, you can get 2 of these guys out, and they just work so much better, and you go from 1 RPG to 4. And that is huge. That is mega huge in this game. So yeah, bear that in mind. Now, they're going to get brought out by this guy. And what's great about this guy, I'm not going to try and say Skrijet. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I am fluent in Russian, but some things are just too difficult, even for me. The brilliant thing about this is 15 men in the back. And also, obviously, the gun package it has on it. You don't really need to upgrade the guns. These work just as well. If you do want to put the iglas on, it makes it quite expensive. So I like to keep it on the cheaper version at 65 points. You can put 3 squads in there, 3 VDV squads, because they're basically all 5-man squads. So a Verba, well, I know that's not VDV, but Verba's a class, so you want Verbas. So a Verba, one of these and one of these. Alternatively, just one of these if you fight against infantry and vehicles. And it just works so well. Again, bring out 2 of them. That's a lot of firepower that you bring in 2 vehicles. Mega good. Sturmoviki, again, we've talked about these guys already, haven't we? It's weird how their camouflage doesn't match anymore. Some of them have got guards uniforms, and some of them have got really antique, old Russia-styled uniforms. Which, yeah, the guards, by the way, are just... They're not like a specific guard regiment like we have in the UK. Guards are those regiments that have distinguished themselves in battle, and they earn the title of guards. Well, to be fair, the British troops did that as well, just Russians have earned it more recently, mainly in World War II, which I find is quite interesting. Now, one thing I will say for the Sturmoviki, obviously with the 600 range bazooka, which obviously does minimal damage, it can still do decent damage to light armored vehicles. Again, they pair super well with these guys also, again, because this is the anti-tank, this is the anti-infantry unit. So put them two together, they do really well, they do really good stuff. And the way you want to transport them is not necessarily the BMOT, which is a cool vehicle because obviously it's got tank, basically tank-like front armor. I wish the armor was actually thicker, not gonna lie. It is a T-72 chassis, isn't it? So yeah, the armor should potentially match T-72, but whatever. I have these as bullet magnets, or just to, you know, take a few bullets for my tanks behind them. So these are more like a decoy. So yeah, you send this guy out in front to take the hits. He's got 2 smokes, so you can obviously avoid 80 germs and javelins. The 50 on it doesn't really do too much. The quad is cool, but ultimately it doesn't do too much damage. And obviously you do want to put a squad in the back of it. No point having this vehicle empty. But it's not the best jump out boy. It does work as one, as driving up to buildings and jumping your squad out for CQB stuff. But this is not the best CQB squad. These guys are. So you can't get 2 of those in this. So this is why this is more of a decoy. And if you're going to have a jump out team, then stick 3 VDV Spetsnaz squads in here and they will clear out any building just like that. No hesitation. I'm pretty sure that 2 of these squads they'll give Delta Force a lot of damage. Though obviously the flashbangs are devastating, but they're not going to win against Delta Force, no chance. But they'll do a lot of damage. Yeah, I mean, they're the same price. It'll be something to test for my 1v1 series, actually. I look forward to doing that. Now, the vehicles tab, we've basically mentioned it already, haven't we? So you've got the Terminator. I've lost the cheaper cornets. For some reason, yeah, it's been moved. I don't really understand the logic behind that. But yeah, you've lost the some of the things that you enjoyed about this deck. Now, Terminators, you still got to have them. They're still pretty essential for this configuration, for this build. They are still fantastic. They're just more expensive by 60 points, which is a lot. They still work great, but you can't afford to have as many in the game as you'd like to. Again, big shame, but nothing you can't get over. T90s, I suppose I could take one T90 out and put a Terminator in. Yeah, that works too. Okay, also puts it to a nice 10,000 total. T90s, great tanks, but like I said, with the 30% ECM no longer being as effective as it used to be, I'm not sure the point. You could actually settle for a cheaper T80. Obviously, you lose some armor there, which isn't ideal. I think for the 30-point price difference, you're still pretty good with having the T90As there. And again, obviously, if somebody's using toes for whatever stupid reason these days, because toes are now completely obsolete. Toes were great because they were cheaper than javelins, and you know their hit probability was similar. Whereas now javelins are so good that there's absolutely 0 point in using toes. So therefore, again, your ECM is very, yeah, obsolete to be honest. You could actually go for T90Ms, like I said earlier. The problem with the Armatas, I tend to never use them because they are massive bullet magnets, and again, in this game, one cruise missile kills one unit. Obviously, a well-placed and accurate cruise missile, but when that cruise missile doesn't care whether you're a T80, T90, T90M, a Sprut, or an Armata, you're better off having the cheaper vehicles. Now, a really good tactic to use is also, because the Sprut does have a decent cannon, by the way, better than the T90A here, you could have 2 Spruts instead of 2 ATGMs, and basically put them behind your T90s for that extra bit of firepower. You don't need the extra armor because, again, you just smoke out if you're in danger, and the T90s are in front of the Spruts to give them the protection. The Spruts also, they are going to be essentially just a little force multiply. The more cannons you have in the game, the better. And for 100 points, they do a lot of damage. I do also have cornets, and the reason I do love cornets is because of the 1,800 meter range, but specifically because they can fire against infantry as well. So they've got both cornets, the HE and the AT version, and the anti-infantry version really works super well. That's a lot of damage. 15 damage is huge, absolutely huge, as Donald Trump likes to say, huge, right? So yeah, mainly, I actually prefer these mainly for anti-infantry stuff. We've got enough ATGMs against tanks. So we've got the Cornet here, we've got them on the T15, B15 Burgenets here. So you don't really need that many more. You've also got the attacker missiles, of course. How could I forget about those on these two guys? So literally, I prefer to use them for anti-infantry stuff, which might surprise you, but there we go. You get really good range. So yeah, I do like these. I probably would still like more Spruts, but I'm happy with having 5 T90s there. So there we are, that's how I have my vehicle deck set up these days with the mega massive nerf. Now, support tab is mainly unchanged. The biggest change, like I said at the start of the video, is that you no longer have your cheap 150 point, 4.5 kilometer, no radar range ante. You've got to settle with the book. Now, for the same price, you can get a book M2. I'm not sure, whoa, why is the model not updated? There we go, there's the book M2 with those cool, super cool looking missiles, by the way. I mean, it's a really cool looking vehicle, there's no doubt about it. The problem is how effective it is, and sadly, these missiles can one-shot, and they do one-shot aircraft quite a lot, but their biggest downside is the fact that they're semi-active with a really tiny range. Now again, the Ante didn't care about this because it had 4,500 range. So even without radar, it could shoot quite, well, super far, and yeah, it could do a lot more damage. Now these guys have a super short range of only 3 kilometers, which is ridiculous for such a huge missile, by the way. But ultimately, you want the terminal guidance that the Buck M3 missiles do provide. So again, not sure. There we go. That's loaded in now. So the Buck M3 is where it's at. You get a slightly bigger range, but ultimately the terminal guidance is what counts. So once the missile actually fires, you don't need to switch the radar on. The missile will automatically track the target. So terminal guidance has had a massive buff in game, which basically means that it's the way forward, especially for long-range AA. So if you're playing as Russia, you don't want the S300s, you want either this or the S350 these days, because terminal guidance is king, absolutely king now. It's very clutch as well, because again, it goes way beyond the written range or the visual range that the vehicle has itself. So terminal guidance is a mega big killer. Also, you get 6 missiles as opposed to 4, which is a nice little addition. So yeah, really, I don't mind the Buck too much at all. The only problem is that obviously it cost me 100 points more to run 2 of these guys instead. You could actually run 3 of them, and that would work. To be honest, that'd give you a really strong air defense net. Again, you wouldn't even need to switch radar on. But I'm happy with 2. It seems to be working for me at the minute. When you run these guys, do the attack move order thing that I do. So you move it, keep moving it on attack, shift the attack move orders, and basically this vehicle will stop, shoot, and then keep moving. So it works super well, and again, you don't need the radar to do that because you've got terminal guidance, which is really cool. Let's talk some more about the rest of the support. I've had to cut one of the derivative to afford 2 of these guys, which is fine. I can live with that because I've got tools. And obviously you guys know that tools are super cool. They work really well. Basically the Russian version of the C-Ram. Super cool vehicle. Very, very effective. I really like these. They're really cool. They work. Now, a lot of my troops are not going to be brought in by armored vehicles, for example, this or this. They're going to be brought up in the Kamaz. Now, two reasons for this. Firstly, it's obviously cheap and you can get more infantry squads in the back of it, but also it is rapid, absolutely rapid. 100 speed means you can get a lot of troops to the front line quickly. The other bonus is that you've got supply. Obviously not a lot of it, but you can stick supply into the back of this vehicle, and as you drop your squad off, by the way, don't drop them in a hot zone with supply at the same time, because that supply is immediately going to go boom, and all your troops are going to take a lot of damage. So yeah, drop the supply off just behind and walk your infantry up away from the hot zone. There we go. Works really well. Works a dream. This thing is my big supply guy, and you can obviously bring in a ton of supply in the back of this tracked vehicle, and obviously that's for supplying things like this, and the RT as well when it eventually runs out. But let's talk about the RT. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but or don't tend to use it, which I think is crazy, but you don't always need 3 RT. 3 RT of the same type rarely gets you better results. 2 do the job almost just as well. However, the even better way to do it is to have a mix of RT. So here we've got cluster, and here we have HE. Now cluster and HE firing at the same time is brilliant. So when you have the option to get 4 pieces of RT out, firing, you know, these guys are firing at the tanks and armored vehicles, these guys are firing at the soft targets, or ultimately if you see an ACV Ooga Booga convoy, you fire both of them at the road that they're traveling down. That's going to disable the ACVs, and this is going to damage a lot of damage to the infantry. So these paired up work absolutely brilliantly. I highly recommend it. Don't ever just bring in 3 of one vehicle. It's boring and it doesn't work that well. You're much better off having this combination if you are able to field it. So there we go. That's how the support and RT works. The support itself in this tab is good. The only thing I wish is that the Kamaz could bring in more supply. That would make it a lot better. More like the American MTV, which is, what, 4,000 supply, I think? 5,000? 4,500 top of my head? Not too sure. Oh, sorry. Let's get back onto this deck. Helicopters. Now, again, no changes here, but for those who haven't seen the previous videos, I will talk about the helis. Now, I used to run the Limas on these, but again, super expensive. And ultimately, 1 APS will destroy the missile. So even though it's great, it does a huge amount of damage when it hits, it's kind of cost ineffective, I'll be honest. So what I've done is I've stuck this as my anti-helicopter helicopter. And you know what? It actually works super good for that reason. Not only is the 30mm actually really good at dealing with helis, but also double Igla pods, 8 Iglas total. They fire at the same time. You've got 15% ECM, 30 armor, 15 health. This heli is very survivable. It's basically like a slightly worse version of the KA-52. By the way, the KA-52 can only put 4 Igla missiles on it, which is not great at all. So yeah, this guy works right against helis. I've tested 2 of these against 4 killer eggs. These 2 won. It was close, but you know, the point still stands. You do actually do alright with these guys. Now the K-52, which you saw there briefly, the whole point of this guy is to take out tanks. And you know what? These guns that you can stick on it, so 4 23mm cannons, can rip apart helicopters. If you get within range of a helicopter, within a 900 meters, these 5 cannons together will rip the helicopter apart in seconds, literally seconds. It's faster than using stingers. Iglas. You're better at closing the gap and just absolutely going for it. And you can close the gap with these guys because of the ECM. It makes it actually low-key pretty damn survivable. So yeah, it does work well. The Vickers are great. I mean, the reason you want Vickers, not attackers, is because Vickers ripple fire, which means basically, obviously, they fire faster and you're more likely to kill the target. Ultimately, again, the target can just smoke off, so attackers do the job kind of very similarly. Their stats are identical, and if you want to save yourself some money, just go for the attackers, why not? But it's only 40 points difference, and yeah, I run the Vickers, so here we are, because you get more missiles away, so you get the missiles away quicker, you go back to low altitude and retreat as soon as you can, before the SHORAD kicks in. The other helicopter I've got is the Mi-35. Again, it's got 4 Igla squads. It's basically a force multiplier. It's basically a bit of backup for this guy. So extra Iglas and attacker missiles again, backing up both these guys here. So yeah, all the helicopters work better together. That's for sure. I'll rarely send any of these helicopters out alone. Definitely not. I've also got the Mi-24, which again has just Kokons, which, you know, they do the job. They're obviously very weak missiles. However, if you get these guys in the back line, which is what they're designed for, they will rip apart enemy AA, RT, and stuff like that. Again, with the dual gun cannons, dual gun pods, and this huge cannon, it will do a shit ton of damage to helicopters again if they are foolish enough to get within 900 meters of the helicopter. So there we go. 2 of those for flanky suicide missions. By the way, these can both bring in 8 men, which is great for bringing in verbers that you can drop off to continue your attack, to give you some AA cover and stuff like that. Again, it's good for putting in snipers and sneaky beaky squads into the back lines too, if you can. So there we go. That is the helicopter tab. I actually really like it. There's not a lot of helicopters here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 helicopters total. And ultimately, that's all I need to use. With America's buff of SHORAD with the CRAM and the SLAM rams now being very good against helicopters, you kind of, yeah, it's one of those where you don't want to bring in too many helicopters. They lose every time. They will all get shot down eventually. It's just whether you can do enough damage first, which, yeah, I'm not sure you can. Because, by the way, remember that attacking missiles, for example, their speed, their velocity is 1190, whereas most SHORAD is closer to 2000. So, yeah, sorry. Somebody fact check me in the comments, but yeah, anyway, I think SHORAD missiles are a lot faster than these guys, so even if they fire at the same time, the SHORAD is probably going to win. SHORAD also tends to fire a lot quicker, in quicker succession, so yeah, you don't stand. Your odds of surviving aren't too good, I'll be honest. The air tab. Now, Su-57s I love. I've painted all my planes black, yeah, so they all look cool in this deck. Su-57 is really good. This combination of weaponry works fantastically well. You have the KH-38, which is an anti-vehicle, basically like the Russian Maverick, basically. And it works so well. 2 of them are fine, because usually when you're deploying this guy, you're not going to get more than 2 targets. You also get 2 seed. So when this pops up, so obviously it goes low altitude, and then it pops up to do its attack run with these missiles. It's got laser designator, by the way, so you can laser targets whilst you're popping up to get these missiles more accurate and more likely to one-shot a lot of vehicles. Yeah, I wish they were top damage, but they're not top damage. So when it's 950 penetration, it's the front armor. So you will need 2 of these to take out an Abrams, unfortunately. Now, yeah, this combination really works well. I've had a lot of fun with it, and even though this has only got 1.25 stuff, not 1.75 like its American counterparts, it does help a lot, and it does make this thing a bit more survivable. And to be honest, as does the seed, of course, which, yeah, it does work quite well. It is a very good vehicle. It's a beautiful plane, beautiful bit of engineering, and yeah, it does work as intended. Now, the Su-30 is for obviously taking out targets, light targets, by the way. These missiles, even though their stats say they do a huge amount of damage, they don't really. They struggle against heavily armed targets, but against things like AA and RT, they work just fine. 4 missiles, put this bad boy low altitude, pop it up, fire the missiles into the RT, and straight back to low altitude. Works really well. They do quite a lot of damage, and when they hit, by the way, you do have to be a bit more precise with these, so make sure that you're accurate with them. But ultimately, yeah, they're very good for wiping out Patriots. They're basically the Russian answer to the F-35, because obviously they've got more range. Apart from the F-35 is way more survivable because of its stealth, so yeah, that's where this kind of gets shot down quite a lot. No ECM, so when you get hit by a missile, you are goners. You are absolutely goners. There's nothing your flares will do to save you, so yeah, again, with the terminal guidance update as well, you will run out of flares by the time the missile catches up to you, and the missile will hit you. Very, very sad times for this vehicle. ECM, you could obviously sacrifice some other stuff and put it on, but I can't afford it. I have maxed out the capacity of this point restriction. Su-35. Now, this thing is beautiful because 5 ECM by default, but also these missiles are very long range, and you can outrange quite a few planes with it. Obviously, if the other plane starts to close in, the next missile will fire, and there we go, you've got 2 smokes in the air against the aircraft. Yeah, it works well. For 260 points, that's a lot of firepower. It's not ideal because it'd be great to get some shorter range missiles as well, maybe this, but again, I can't afford it with this build, so yeah, this is how I'm going to run it. A very, very cheap solution, but it is a tough choice to make, so there we go. Su-34. Now everybody knows what the Su-34, it is an absolute classic, beautiful bit of kit. 400 points, but it's capable of taking out a lot more vehicles than, well, a lot more than 400 points worth of vehicles. The cluster bombs, you want 6, 4 fire bombs, and 2 HE bombs. That's the best way to run it, for sure. It's a beautiful plane, but ultimately at low altitude you drop all these bombs and you can destroy quite a good column. Obviously, if you manage to get it in a place where there's lots of infantry, the fire bombs do a lot of damage, as do the HE quite well as well. But ultimately the clusters are what it's all about. They will do a huge amount of damage to tanks, killing quite a few potentially, and an even more amount of damage to lightly armored vehicles. Sorry, my voice is starting to go. I've just been playing as Russia. I've been getting absolutely hammered, as you can expect, and yeah, it's been painful. My elo is nearly 2,000 though, which is cool. Yeah, these Su-34s are beautiful. I do love using them, but bear in mind they are super expensive, and the probability of this thing getting shot down is really high. Again, Su-57 is a lot more survivable for the ECM, and with its slightly higher style. What you could do is cut one of these and put one of these in, which would actually work pretty decently. Because again, if you send these out in a pair, they do a lot of damage. They really do well. It's a lot of micro, but you can shoot down a helicopter, get some AA, and get some tanks. Obviously, tanks can just smoke out, and this negates the usefulness of this thing, but it still works pretty good. And that is my deck. That's my Guards VDV. It used to be my favorite deck by a mile, but unfortunately, I'm not so sure anymore. The nerf has been a hard pill to swallow. But not to worry, we are looking at other ways. Other ways to make Russia more enjoyable and more playable given this update. Now, like I said, this is a sneak peek of a deck that I'm building. I will be releasing a video about this one, so keep posted, subscribe if you haven't already, of course. And yeah, I got a sneaking suspicion that even though this works really well on many levels, this is going to be the absolute new way forward. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see. I've yet to try this out. I've yet to try this combination out ever. But, you know, I'm going to get my ante back, and I'm going to get even cheaper tanks with no ECM, the T-72s, because ECM is kind of irrelevant. I'm going to save myself a lot of points having it in that configuration. So yeah, I can't wait to see how that future deck, when I build it, will actually work. But that's all I have for you. Some of my decks are completely unaffected, which is really nice, but yeah, some are heavily nerfed. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.